Thank you for joining me today. I have this little project to do for a friend. It's for her daughter's bedroom. A while ago I reupholstered a pair of headboards for her, and the leftover fabric will be going on here, so it's a bit of an upcycle project as well. It's got a separate seat, a base, and the deep buttoning at the back. So let's get on with it. There were 2 screws at the front and then 2 at the back, which I've just removed, and that will drop out. When I cut the centre panel out, I actually made sure that I'd cut on the outside of this panel. So I'm just going to pull this up. I'm lucky on this side where the piping is that it will just come on up there. I'll take that all the way to the top because I need the widest width of fabric I can get. On this side, I'm not so lucky. I have to ease the stitching up along here. I need the widest width of fabric I can get. And occasionally you have problems like this when you are upcycling something. I know only gives me maybe ½ an inch at the most, and because it will be going underneath this side of the chair, I can actually cut this lining back to that line of stitching. It's going to take a little while to get out. I'm not going to remove the fabric underneath, there's no point. I will put this over the top, making sure that the fabric is going in the right direction. I could just bring this down and staple this in on here and then back tack this over the top. But I think it's going to be as long as it is short if I sew it in, which I'm looking here and that's how they did it. So I'm going to turn that over. It won't matter if it's a bit wonky. Turn that over as well, and I am going to bring this over at least to there. Make sure that's in a straight line across. I know through here, it goes under there, and then pin through here to hold it tight, like that. This, I need to take that back at least ½ an inch there and pin it on either side. That goes there. Then I'm going to bring this forward and pin that into place. Now the front goes all the way round to the front. You know, I'm going to do it from the other side because you always do an arc from top down. Cut this back slightly, bringing it into shape, and the same on this side, being very generous, I don't want to be tight, and the same with this. I'm going to just cut that back, being generous. I'm going to turn it the other way around. My pins will actually be going in the right direction, so I can take them out as I'm sewing, and that should bring it in. I'm not going to worry too much about the shaping because it's going to have back tacking put over the top anyway. My generous cutting was a bit wonky, but that's okay. And then I'll double check on this side, making sure that I'm following the original line. I can just cut that back a little bit more. This goes on the underside of the chair seat. I think that's the angle I want to go at. I might have to change that. I'm going to do it this way. I can always undo it if necessary and rework it. I'm going to pull this up, and I'm not worried about matching patterns, whether there's a centre pattern. It's going under the chair seat, so it's not going to be noticeable anyway. And then off the end here. I'm going to bring this over and into line. I'm going to line up my stitching with the markings here. I'm going to make sure it goes over equally both sides. And then I'll take this piece of back tacking, staple it in place with the side of the back tacking going along where the sewing is, all the way to either side. Pull that over the front like that. Not going to worry about it being a bit knobbly. Twist that over. I'm not going to pull it, I'm just going to place it into position. And I will work my way around from the back to the side. The way the fabric goes on, it looks a little bit wonky, but it's actually quite straight. Work my way all the way around. With the rounded curve, I managed to keep it from bulking up too much by just allowing it to have little ripples or tiny pleats. And it should set in the chair frame quite neatly without being lumpy and lopsided. So I'm pleased with that. And then with the front, there really isn't very much fabric to go over, so I'm having to be a little bit cautious. On the corner, I'm going to raise it up slightly to take some of the bulk out of there. Because it is bulky fabric, let's see where that goes. Okay, I am going to take a chunk out of here, down and up. That should hold there under here if I pull that tightly over the top and into position. That should not come out. it should look quite neat. So I've got a very naughty kitten helping me today. Because I'm only going to be doing single piping on everything, I'm just going to cut it 1.5 inches wide. I'm doing it on a diagonal. I am going to put the piping together. I've got everything lined up so that the pile is all going down. Now, starting at the top with the pile going down, I am going to sew this into position. Longest stitch, keep the raw edges together and sew all the way down. Now I have in here thin piping because this is quite thick fabric with all the quilting, so I don't want it to be too bulky. Where the piping is joined together, I'm going to cut those to separate them, and I'm going to cut back to within 1/4 inch because I really don't want too much bulk there. Open this up, make it as flat as possible, fold that over and work my way on down to the end of this length of piping cord. Putting the back tacking on and bringing that to the front of the wood here. Just helps keep everything in place. I put the black cloth underneath, and I did actually extend the piping all the way up the back here because when I had this in situ you could see a dark line around the base of the green, and I didn't think that looked very pretty. This might not solve all of the problem, but it should solve part of the problem. Fits quite nicely. I'm not sure if I can push it back any further. It might mean that I've got new holes going in the front. Maybe that's a little bit more even on either side if I twist it. I'll play with it and then screw that back in. Having removed this cushion cover, I've decided to take the cushion apart. I've just ironed this so it's nice and flat and open, and I seem to think that this flower here seemed about the most central, like that, with the centre of there, and then open that all the way up. Before I start, I have made sure that the velvet is going down towards the front. You could pin it if you wanted to, but I'm not going to worry about it, and I'm going to just cut it out like this all the way around. Now I chose this side of the seat cushion to follow because it was the most equal. I did check the other side of it and that was decidedly wonky. Lay this one on top, make it match as well as I can so that I can cut this one out. If it's not perfect, it doesn't really matter. It's on the opposite side and it really isn't like the seat cushion matches up with the back. Now that there's the deep buttoning in the back, there's no way anything will really match up, but that's close enough, and I'll cut this out too. This seat cushion joins in the centre rather than has a border, and I was going to self-pipe it, but I realised self-piping might not be such a good idea. So I picked up this piping cord and I'm going to sew it along here. I think that works. It's pretty, it's shiny. I know it's not the same colour, but it does pick up the hints of the green that's in there. So I think that's perfect. When I went and picked this up yesterday, I purchased it by the yard. The young lady who cut it for me literally just cut it. And when she cut it, it immediately unravelled. I wasn't really paying attention. I said to her, don't do it that way. What you need to do is put a bit of tape around like this. You don't have to do this on every cord. If it's got a flange attached, you don't need to do this at all because it just holds. But what you do is you cut the centre of the tape like that, and there's no unravelling, unlike how she did it, which was to cut it and then put the tape on. So this unravelled about an inch, and the same on the other side that she cut off, which is why I said to her, put tape round. I'm only doing that because I really don't want all that length on there that was unravelled. That's just going to irritate me. So I'm going to overlay that here, and I am just going to find a fine dressmaking pin. I'm going to go in one side, across and through the other side like that. I'm going to do that all the way along the centre here because I'm hiding the seam. It just makes it easier if you've got it pre-fixed, because what sometimes happens as you sew is you unravel it. You don't mean to, it just happens. I'm going to do that all the way across here to the other side. I'm not tightening it, I'm just letting it lay there and then pinning it into position. I go through a little bit of the trim so it just holds it. I might twist this side up just a little bit before I start sewing, but probably not. And I'll make my way all the way across to the other side. I do like that. I hope my friend likes it because she has no idea. That is one of the nice things. My friends often just let me play with their projects because I see things that they don't necessarily see. This friend's actually a part-time designer, so she's always coming up with ideas. I've just come up through the back here and tacked down 2 pieces of the trim. I came out here. I'm going to go up next to it, just a little ways. Work out where that's coming through. Make sure it doesn't split any of those nice shiny threads. Pull it tight and then over and under so it holds this part in place. And again, just make sure it's all the way along the seam because you want it as straight as possible. The whole idea is to make it look like it's been sewn into that seam, and then come up next to it. It is a bit time consuming. Whatever you do when you're hand sewing, it's always a little bit time consuming. Work out where you're coming up to. Kind of want to come in behind there like that. Oopsie daisy. I split the threads there. You must not split those threads because if you do, when you pull it out, you end up revealing the cording underneath, which isn't quite so pretty. You need to make sure if you're using double thread that everything is even. You don't want one side of the thread to be looser than the other because eventually your cording will work itself loose and you don't want that. I think that's going to go in really nice and tight like that. Come up next to it. If you come up right next to it, you should be able to move forward quite a way. If you come up forward, then you're not going to catch all of these bits of rope down. There's always a chance that you're going to miss something, and then it will pull apart later on. This is a stab stitch. You have to set each stitch separately. Pull that one out and carry on going across. Only that, if you come up next to it, you do kind of open this up a little bit. You're catching it on the other side. I can see that I didn't pull it all through. I need to make sure all of that's pulled in. You don't want anything showing on the other side. And now that I've pulled that in, try again to go back up. And if you come next to it, which is pretty close to that seam, if you're unsure, just move everything and then set the next one. So you're moving forward about 1/2 inch each time you follow the rope. I have to have that seam open. I kind of wish I'd sewn it down back through. You kind of unravel it a little bit just to get that stitch in. When I first started this kind of work, I would go around the outside, but I did discover that it kind of holds better if you just come up through the middle and then follow the ropes like that. There we go. I'll go through there. So long as you go through the center somewhere, there we go. I'm getting there slowly. There's no speed involved in sewing trims on. Sometimes they take forever. This is the front. I'm going to pop that under there. I'm not cutting anything back just yet. Put that there for now. And the pile is going down. So this is also the front. I'm going to pop that on there like that. And hopefully that will stay open. I want it open because then the bulk is kind of spread across. Lift that up and move all of this into place under here. I think like that. It's a bit awkward because this curves round, and I am going to sew this into position. Sew down towards this corner here. Cut in there about 1/4 inch deep and into that corner. Pull that back. Needle down, foot up, and I'm hoping I can twist the top into position because it is such thick fabric. It probably doesn't want to do what I want it to do. And the border is quite narrow as well, which doesn't exactly help. So I think that's where I want it. And I'm going to just sew to the back. Keep those together so one's not pulling against the other, just pinch it. And I'm going to bring that in towards the corner, maybe about 1 inch out. That'll do. Flatten that out, bring this to the end like that. Make sure it's even both sides and cut that back. Then I'm going to pop this to the top here, so it would be matching there. Down about 1.5 inches. And now I'm going to sew the other side in of the same border, keeping that even, all the way to the front and round the front so it's secure. That should fit perfectly. Doesn't mean to say it is going to fit perfectly. I've learnt that over the years. Because on this side I'm going with the pile of the fabric, and on the other side it was going against the grain of the fabric. When you're going against the pile, you're pushing the fabrics together, and when you're going with the pile, the fabric is just sliding nicely into place. That might be a little bit tight there, but that's okay. As I come into this corner, I'm going to pre-cut it where I think I need it, which is about there. If I do that, I can maneuver the fabrics against each other as I get there. So this wants to come level with here, which is good, and that's still level with there. Needle down, foot up, and then twist everything. Really lift the foot up if you need to. And twist everything back into position, foot down. And now I'm going to just line those stitches up. And go all the way across the front of here again. Now that should really secure the cording in place. And then reverse. And I'm going to cut the cording back as well. That will not come undone. And now I'm going to do exactly the same on this side. Open that seam up, pop it onto here. The front of the fabric, the way the pile goes, is this way because I put a mark in there. I always mark it for these. I have got them wrong before. Put the cutout on top of there and then maneuver all of this into place. And so as I already did. Here is the back where the zip goes in. I'm going to line that up with the corner there. I don't often do my zips into the corner. I'm going to feed that along here like this to the other end, and that will determine how long my zip needs to be. So I'm going to cut that there, and I'll do the same with the other side. Now this fabric is quite bulky, so I've actually cut the corner off there, so I shouldn't have quite so much bulk going in to the end of the zip. I'm going to lay that down on top and slide this underneath and sew it into position, folding the fabric up as I go. Should work. I'll do that to the end of here. I'm coming into the end of the zip like this. Before I get that, I'm actually going to cut off a little piece like that so there's not so much bulk, just like I did on the other side, because it's going into the side seam. So the second side is here. I've already pre-cut the back. Make sure the tops are even or as close to, and slide that into place. Pull that into place and lifting that up so that it doesn't interfere with the zip as I'm putting it in. Hopefully that's going to end up the same length. I'm just going to cut this back just a little bit more so it doesn't interfere with anything as I put it in. Cut that back there like that. The top tooth is on this side, so I'm going to pull that open like that and start messing with this. Sometimes it's just one hit and it's in place, and sometimes you might have to do 2 or 3. I'm going to need to bring that, in line a bit better. There we go. Now that's obviously down. So as I say, I usually take 2 or 3 times to get this exactly where I want it. It's a bit awkward, that's all. It's not difficult. It gets frustrating if you've got a whole pile of them to do. I've got it on. I think it's right, but the best way to tell is when you bring the zip down. If it looks even, then it's right, and if one side or the other loops out, then you've got it wrong, but that looks even. This side I'm going to pop under here, and so now I'm going to be putting a piece of this over the top so that it will stop the zip from pulling apart. It just strengthens it. First over there and to the end. Now for the other side, I'm going to pop this side in as well. I think I've got the measurements right. If not, I'll just have to undo one side and put it back in. Put my piece of fabric over the top, just like I had. Turn the chair seat cover the other way up. Now the reason I don't really like doing it this way is because there's often too much bulk. On the back side, I am going to cut some of that out, and I'm also going to cut in like that towards the seam so that I can turn it on the seam. Put everything down. Okay, now I'm going to sew to the seam and just over. That should be on the seam, and then I'm going to have to maneuver all of this into place, and it's not going to want to go. Lift that a bit higher up. I think that's where that's got to go, and lower it. Then keep all of this in line as I sew across the back of the chair seat towards the other side. I put this on top because this is the shaped side of the seat cushion, and the border is obviously straight. I'm going to have to take one side off and shorten it. It's walking too much. That happens. That's too long. So I'm going to cut that back and then line this up where my sew line is, and I think that's where I want it to go. That would work. So I cut it back, made the adjustment, and I am going to sew the second side of the zip in just like I showed you. And with a bit of luck, that should go in perfectly. So I'm going to come down, line everything up and sew that corner in. The only difference is I'm going to cut into the corner from this side like that, because I want all of this to be going down into the side. It should work out perfectly. Bring that in to the seam there. Lift the foot, twist and pull everything into shape, and then join my stitches here. Make sure that is back there. And so over the original stitching, and it's gone in well this side like that and that side, and now I've got to do the second side of the zip and it will be finished. Start a little ways back, so I over sew the seam there and start moving on. Remember to cut in at your angle. If you've got thick fabric, remember to cut back some of the excess there. Push everything forward and get it as close to that corner as you possibly can. Lift the foot and twist. I sometimes go back over those back corner seams just to make sure that they're where they need to be. But I'll do that from the other side to make sure they're secure. The only corner that needs to be altered is this one, because I want the seam going down the other way. So I'm just going to pull that out like that. Pop that under with that wonky seam up, and I'm going to just sew that along the top and into place, and then I'm happy with this. Lift the foot, twist everything into place as best I can, because this is really not wanting to play ball with me, and then down. And that's done. Something I would have done different is I wouldn't have put the buttons down at the bottom there. I would have just left those ones and then folded it down. Mainly because I feel that there's too big a gap here. So if I pulled that down, it would have filled that up a little bit better. It looks a bit hollow. I'm sure once it's been used, it will settle down. And that might have been why I didn't notice the problem when I was taking it apart, because it just looked old and needing to be redone. One part I do like is this. I think it's a nice complement to the cover. Thank you for joining me on this project. I have a feeling that my friend will be absolutely delighted with how this chair has turned out. If you want to see more from me, please subscribe, hit the bell button, and a few thumbs up would be absolutely brilliant. And in the meantime, take care, see you later. Ciao!